So it's just running a few minutes late.
Okay.
I don't know if we want to wait or not.
Karen, you got kind of print it and everyone on the screen.
Yep. Yep. Do you want to wait? Or I could.
We'll see what he needs to do roll call anyway,
Right,
because
so let's do that anyway. So I'll call recount to order.
I call to
Yes.
Council on Aging to order.
We do.
Oh, we do.
We do.
So it's gonna
you have
go,
one online too.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't see that.
Or for,
So we have a quorum anyway.
where's that? Yeah. Oh, you have a quorum ready for COA without?
Right, oh, no, in recalc as a quorum.
yes, we do.
Recalc all set.
Yeah. All right, so on recount, Michael Coltman,
Here.
Montesini,
There.
Rebecca.
Present.
Oh, okay. Haven't seen you. John Parsons.
Here.
Von Sasso coming. Not here yet. Mark Doxer here. And John O'Neill present. So. We have a quorum.
Okay,
Is.
Yes, yeah, he knows what, yeah.
all right, Council on Aging. Marilyn Shapley. Here. Jean Prado.
Here.
Nancy T.
Here.
Rose Marie.
Here.
John Parsons.
Here.
Karen Panett.
Here.
Karen Janowski.
Here.
Karen, you know?
Oh, I didn't even see her. Dr. Fatino.
Yeah, sorry, this is my work one, so I'm trying to change my name.
Don't you worry about it. I was just being fresh. Um, can I just say before we start? So the purpose of this meeting is for, primarily for recount and Council on Aging to see the latest slides, which also include cost estimate. So this is going to be new information for our committees. So I guess, what we would ask is that we can have like a 5-minute, if you want to say, I know we have some guests, but if people want to, if you have some questions that you want to put out on the floor, to do that now. Otherwise, I believe protocol is that that the committee members are the first to make comments in a meeting such as this. Then I'm allowing, then our guests can ask questions and comment. So we have a pretty busy agenda.
Sounds great. Does anyone else?
Anybody want to make a comment, our guests?
I don't know if I want to make one now or after.
Okay.
I have a question. Has this committee interfaced at all with the Killam School Building Committee? In any way?
We have been kept informed about the Killen Committee, but we haven't directly.
And initially, there were some conversations with the Killam, with Council on Aging. And they certainly are informed of everything that we're doing. But as far as standard meetings, correct me if I'm wrong, no.
So is this committee all aware of the fact that they're looking to increase the scope of the Killam students by 1/3?
I knew they were gonna increase, I didn't know how, by what percentage, okay.
Yeah,
Right? It's about 1/3, right?
So,
Yeah.
right.
With all kindergarten in town and pre-K in town. And I just feel like we have silos going on in town with all these big building projects. And I'm not confident that the silos are talking to each other. And I know Simon's Way is one of the proposed areas,
Mhm.
and I'm really concerned about that.
Where's
I
the
just have-
30%
I-
students come from? Are they
Well,
coming from other schools?
before we get into a discussion, I'm gonna
Just identify yourself.
I'm sorry?
say,
Can you identify?
Sure,
yourself?
Laura Stella, I live at 347 Chalice.
thank you. Point well taken, and I think both Recalc and Council on Aging will take that back to our meetings to see if there's something else we need to do in order not to have these silos as you're suggesting. But
The Killam, next Killam meeting, I'm actually gonna be raising the same thing,
Mhm.
you know, and I believe this project and that project are within a month apart of.
Well,
uh,
yeah, we can't have a discussion on it tonight, because we've got, an agenda that we're getting through, but what we can do
Mhm.
is, that's a very valid point, and I think it's something that we should explore.
Mark?
Just a quick comment. So, very much so, and, I think the community deserves to understand all the projects that are being considered,
Yeah,
right? So there are, rec activities, there's Simon's Way,
right,
this project, there's Killam, all the different things. And we've not had any formal discussions, but informal discussions have been, when is the right time to have all those discussions and bring them together? And I think the thought was, as they're coming toward, here's what we're thinking, that's the best time to do it, because the Killam change, if I understand it, just happened pretty recently in terms of thinking about a broader scope. We want to go through, and this is all about site selection, what we
Yeah.
need that
Right,
site to
right,
accomplish our goals.
which is greatly impacted by a site that's so close to it, that's gonna expand drastically. And I was at the selectmen's meeting, select board's meeting last night, and I don't know if, I need to sign up to speak at the beginning. I just think that, again, we have all these different, everybody's gonna build a brand new building. And do we realize the impact of each other? All these projects together.
Yeah,
Right.
I,
Yeah.
Right now,
And I don't wanna get in the middle of your, if it's appropriate for me to sign up to come to the next meeting, I will. I don't know.
Michael?
I just have one question. So is your concern congestion and,
Yes,
no, I'm serious. I'm
legitimately, yes,
so that's what I'm trying
yeah.
to fully understand your comment.
I mean, I don't
So-
even know how it's gonna be able to take the children, the number of children they're talking about in a
That's
residential,
something
but
It has to be
that's fine.
considered.
But we
So-
got this,
But I
and we got
wanted
some
to
really big
understand
projects.
what you're concerned with,
Yeah.
because, we're thinking about 3 sites, and congestion is one of our criteria for thinking about that. And I just wanted to understand that.
Yeah, it totally
So-
is.
all right, but we're just at the point that getting information.
yeah.
And that's what, we need
So-
information so we can
Right.
have input to the town about the senior centers slash,
Right.
community center.
So, point well taken, and we will add that to the next agenda,
Okay,
and we can.
so I'll come back up.
Yeah.
Okay, can I stand for that?
Yes, oh, yes, and you and you can have,
You can help
No,
yourself to
thanks.
cookies.
I'm good, thanks. I appreciate it, thank you.
Anybody?
Quick comment on that, just
Yep.
without getting too far. And so just to,
I'm sorry.
that's okay. Allay your feels a little bit. I mean, part of the reason we have a select board liaison on this meeting, we have Carlo on
Right,
SWEC, we have Karen on Killam. I mean,
Right.
we look to them to help
right,
organize and coordinate. Town meeting has asked me specifically that we redo the master plan and get some better organization. So this is not a issue that's falling on deaf ears. We are aware, and we also know the constraints and the impacts that they're gonna have across the town, not just that what we're doing. So I can't, to your point, have we had a specific conversation with the Killam School Building Committee? No, we
We'll
have
have
not.
the consultants talk to
But,
each other.
right, but part of what we're presenting
Okay.
now about going through site selection is looking at those very issues that you're raising. But in terms of how this feeds in with everything else, I won't throw Mark under the bus too much, but we do ask for the select board to help guide us and give us that direction.
I heard the committee readout at the select board meeting. And that was it. It was move along and I'm like,
Understood.
where's
Does anybody else, have
I
a
think we should
comment?
move on to the purpose
Yeah.
of this meeting.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Can I make just one last comment on this topic? Sorry. So, and on the Simon's Way committee as well, there's liaisons from each of the groups too. So Karen represents the Council on Aging, Angela Binda represents Recreation Committee. So a lot of that information does come back to the boards and committees in a very thoughtful way. I think Karen, you come to several of the meetings with the COA, you're a very active member and you report back very, very well on what's going on SWAC. And I think we're all kind of well informed on what's going on in town, generally speaking, as committees and members of the community. So, but I definitely think it's a point well taken that we could do better. So,
And I also sit on the kiln.
yes.
Keeping an eye on it, it's a valid point, and I'm keeping an eye on everything. And I go to a lot of the meetings, but it's a valid point, and we'll hear some more tonight, but, we'll keep an eye on it, for sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chris is going to pull up the PowerPoint presented by Joel from BH+A.
Yeah, okay, so.
We have copies.
Excuse me, Joel, can you just kind of introduce
Yeah.
yourself to everybody?
I'm Joel Bargman. I'm a principal at BH+A, and my job there is to do the feasibility studies for many senior centers and community centers and centers for active living. Sort of calling this one a center for active living, sort of a little more generic, encompassing. And it's pretty exciting for me. I can hardly wait for tonight. This is the first time I get to present everything that we looked at from the beginning to, as Nancy mentioned, the cost estimates and bringing in some of the traffic that we haven't talked about, the geotechnical, the environmental. So there's a lot of new information. I was going to do a rather comprehensive presentation of what we have. It's maybe a half hour, 40 minutes. Is that okay?
Go for
I think people are more interested in information than the summary, so I was gonna go. I don't have to do the introduction because you've all seen these 4 slides, but I wanted to have the slideshow be complete for the people that may pick it up on the website after the meeting tonight. Just reiteration, we are in this feasibility study phase. We're nearing the end of the data gathering and nearing the point where we'll actually start writing the report. So tonight's the first opportunity to really get into the guts of what is draft feasibility report. We have the 3 site options at, Pleasant Street, close to the center of town, Oakland Road, and Simon's Way. I don't know if we can slide that little button down there. So I'm going to go through the sites one by one and talk about the site issues. And then I'll pick up the building issues after that, because I've tried it both ways. And I think that you really want to compare the buildings next to each other. And if I do the building for Pleasant Street up here, you may not remember it by the time we get to the end. But this is a really interesting picture to help us orient ourselves on the site, the sort of more historic facade of the building. And keep this in mind because we have one idea that is going to be discussed with the Historic Commission on this facade. We have the on-street parking on Pleasant Street. We have 2 abutters that are relatively close to the site, and then a rather tight 1.5 acre site. I actually have 2 site plans for this project on Pleasant Street, the Cal. One includes the gym, and we'll show you what happens when we include the gym. and then one that doesn't include the gym. The whole goal with this feasibility study is to treat everything as close to equal as you can, so that we're really judging a building and how the site fits, not, oh, I like this project better because it has a few more square footage. So we're trying as best as we can to equalize the schemes across them. And it's interesting that when this is a particularly small site, that when we do have the gym, we're a little bit short on space, but when you don't have the gym, you can equalize this with a site, a building on the other sites without a gym. So we've brought back two options here that you hadn't seen earlier. And what this red line is showing is that what really works well in a center for active living, where a great proportion of your patrons will be seniors, is having the parking within 125 feet of the front door of the building. And that works well. You get almost all of the parking, which is in the garage underneath this wing of the building, within great proximity to the front door of the building. What's interesting is that you can see this building shifts just a little bit. When you put the building in with the gym, it pushes everything out to this line of the property, which is over the setback line. So in the building with the gym, you have sort of a zoning variance that we'd have to get in theory. Now, the town's exempt from zoning, but I know the town is exempt from their own zoning, but the town tries to comply with the dimensional requirements. And it would be particularly nice to comply with the dimensional requirements next to your neighbors. And when you have the gym on there, the thing just doesn't quite fit on. We're over the setbacks on this side, and we're over the setback here, and we're over the setback right here. So there's a number of non-conformances on that portion of the building. And you'll see on the plans later, we can get 52 spaces in this building. That would be the third non-conformance. That doesn't meet the zoning requirement, which for the size building that's on here would be 60 spaces. We're short the number of zoning spaces. And in reality, you want a few more spaces than what the zoning requires. So it's an interesting option to consider when we do the smaller building. We can make some of those non-conformances disappear. The other thing you'll see on the site plan is this room here is a little bit undersized for the multi-purpose room. It's about 2,100 square feet. Multi-purpose room wants to be close to 2,500 square feet. One way, it would be controversial, would be to add a little bay onto that side of the building, which happens to be the most historical side of the building. So it makes the multi-purpose room much better. Whether that would fly, we're going to meet with the Historic Commission in an informal basis in a couple of weeks and discuss that issue, because we're also adding on to this building on the backside, and they may have some opinions about that as well. So before we get everybody hooked on what you can do, we do want to get this in front of the boards that have jurisdiction over this building. But that is an opportunity for this particular building. The other thing to understand on this site that sort of works to your advantage is that Pleasant Street is 6 feet higher than the parking lot. And then the parking lot slopes down. What that allows you to do on this site is to have a lower level of parking and then a second level of parking that's at the floor level of this building. So there's 2 garage levels, which you'll see that in the cost estimate. But there are two levels of garage that handle the parking on the site, and then you're literally building above the garage and building on the first floor and the second floor of that building. And what I didn't show you is we're also building off the back of that. So I don't think building on this side of the building is of any controversy. It's already been done. The back, we'll have to see, the front maybe more so. But parking here gets you 52 parking spaces in the garage, and there are the on-site street parking spaces. What one abutter is here, the other abutter is there, and those are, they're windows and bedrooms that are close, and so that's what we were concerned about with the first option that I showed that really goes over the setback line on that side, and the setback line sort of dwarfing this sort of historic building. So this particular site is great. Got utilities, it's got water, it's no floodplains, no wetlands, nothing to worry about other than stormwater. Because once we put the garage in, put an addition here, have a ramp into the garage, there's very little land left for letting the rainwater soak into the groundwater system. So we'll have to that will have to be done underneath the garage in cisterns, which is more complicated and expensive to deal with. So from a site utility perspective, excellent site, except stormwater is going to be more complicated. The traffic, well, this is sort of, we had the zoning district here because the zoning district gives you the parking count, but it's also points out one other issue. All the sites need a special permit to handle this use. On Pleasant Street, a community center and a center for active living is basically, according to the zoning, a community center is permitted with a special permit from the community planning and development. It's already there, so that's a formality. That's not really a hindrance. It's something to think about on the other sites. We're able to get 20,000 square feet in that new scheme on that site. So that's a more compact, more usable space than you saw at the public meeting a couple of weeks ago. Tightened up that scheme and it works better, and I'll show you what the deficiencies are. This just mentions that the real way to do parking is based on this ITE, which is International Traffic Standards. And that would be ideally to have 72 parking spaces on the site as opposed to the 67 that are required by the zoning, 5 more. Now, when you have a Valentine's Day party or Thanksgiving lunch or something, you're usually going to exceed that 72 count. But it's a little bit like the church on Easter or, the synagogue on high holidays. You deal with your high holiday in some other way that you have to manage on your site. That's part of a traffic management plan. You don't want to build your site so that if you need 130 spaces on a special occasion, that you have 50 spaces on that site sitting fallow. Because one of the worst things we can do for the environment is to pave over our land. It doesn't drain and it creates heat islands in our communities. These are just some details that I don't need to go through, but they're summary in the. Yeah.
There is some parking across the street as well too, correct?
On-street parking, yes.
No, in the lot, don't we have a lot?
Yeah, there's about 6.
How many spaces there?
Where the police are parking?
No.
So this is, it's a Reading Housing Authority location that currently allows for parking. Is it 4 or 5 spots maybe, Matt?
That was 11.
I think there are 11 in the lot, but I don't think they're all, I think they're allocated. to
I think there's 5.
There's 5, yeah, there are
There's
5.
five.
Right now, we have permission for 5 during our business.
And then there are two handicap spaces.
Now, the spaces out in front could be used by anybody. They're not
No,
necessarily, they're deeded to you.
No.
Oh, they can be used by anyone who's handicapped.
Yeah.
But not where
So-
center.
What this is showing is that, you know, the one, each site has a zoning chart and compliance showing where the deficiencies are and what we'll have to think about to overcome the deficiencies. When I say yes, no, it sort of depends on which one of those two options we show. That with the gym, we have a setback problem. Without a gym, we can mitigate that problem. So,
Question
yes, sir.
on the Pleasant Street site. Now, they do get water and, heavy downpours.
Yeah.
Have you accounted for how it would handle that?
Well, with the new stormwater management, you really have to collect all the water, divert it in, and have a managed system. Ideally, all of that is contained on site, and that would be contained in cisterns and a system below the garage. Now, we haven't gotten to that level of engineering. If Pleasant Street was chosen, we'd have to study that more in the next phase, the conceptual design, see that. But we know there is a problem on that site with the groundwater and the cistern in the garden area on the corner of that triangular park. So the second site is Oakland Road, and it's opposite the high school. The high school has a driveway entering here, and then the site sort of extends this full corner up to this neighbor's here. A little bit hard to see, but there is another neighbor in the middle of the site right here that the site has to cut around, and you'll see it on the drawing. This is a nice slide because what you really want to do is line up your driveways on the site. It reduces the friction of traffic. So that's sort of a fundamental thing that the civil engineers like to do. And when you do that, it puts the entry to this Center for Active Living as a site in a good location on this road, that if you come out of here and you look this way or you look that way, you could see 250 feet in each direction, which is what we like to get for this kind of a project. So this is a nice site from a traffic perspective, a little bit better than Pleasant Street, where when you come out of that garage, you're not that far from the corner of the site. So this is a site plan that shows how a new building can fit on this site. And you're going to see tonight a little different. We have the same building on this and Simon's Way because they both fit, and that way you don't have to think I like one site better because the building, the same building will happen to fit on both sites. As I mentioned, you have a driveway coming in. This is rather complicated to do, very steeply terrained here, very steep hill. So this is on a platform, and in reality, those are awfully close to a couple of other houses. So we're showing them, but we showed them there to say that perhaps you really wouldn't want to have pickleball on this particular site. So the way we've done the cost estimates, pickleball doesn't fit on Pleasant Street. This pickleball is an add-on. The basic estimates for every option is the Center for Active Living, the parking, and the sidewalk. Doesn't include the pickleball. You come in nicely, and this is really another great parking lot. Your 125-foot radius encompasses mostly. We like to get half of the spaces in that. Here we're getting, 2/3, a little bit more. One thing to consider is this neighbor. Right now, you can't see that neighbor. That drone shot that I showed was taken a week ago, and even in the dead of the end of the winter when there's no leaves on the trees, you can't see that house. All of a sudden, when we're done putting this parking in, that house is going to be open to all of this because there's grading and excavation happening on that side of the site. So one of the things to think about is the impact of the building on that neighbor and on this neighbor. So we're coming in here. There's that neighbor's house. Here's the parking area, and there's the building area. When you go to the site, it's sort of flat here in that zone. I love this because it's the same winter. Just amazing how different it is in the summertime to think about it and how much more dense it is. So that's the exact same location, winter, summer. So you can see that the site's a little bit flat there. Oddly enough, when they built the high school, it appears that the excess fill from the high school was put in the site here. And you can see, this just shows that wonderful site view distance. You come out of that parking lot, you don't have to worry about who's coming and going. Where these lines are means that's a slope, and that those lines are going up, and these lines are going up. So you can see there are fewer lines in the middle. That's where it's flat. And that's where the site was filled. It's nice because it gives us a flat area to put a building. It's not nice because you can't put a building on fill. You have to let the foundations and the slab get down to the native virgin soil, because when they put that fill on the site, they didn't do it in a controlled manner. And the fill from the high school would be the same as the topsoil here, which is 12 inches of organic material that's centuries of trees shedding their leaves and the leaves becoming soil. It's not great for building. So, you know, we have a nice flat area, but it is a hardship to put a building on that. It'll be a little bit more from a foundation perspective. And I know I'm probably in your territory as a structural engineer. The red lines then indicate, at some point they were thinking of putting a school here, and someone, this firm, PAR, did a geotechnical analysis of where the bedrock was. This is showing where the bedrock is underneath the ground. And as you come over to this side of the site, the bedrock is getting to be 120, which is the same or a little bit less than the flat portion of the site in the middle. Why is this important? Here's that flat area of the site. Ideally, you want to sort of put your parking lot and your building as close to that and keep it as close to that as possible. It's hard to see, but there's paper streets, and there's an extension to Cold Spring Road that comes down here and connects Oakland with Cold Spring up there. This is a little bit easier to see. There are these paper roads. When the developers first developed this site as a residential development, town meeting in 2016 got rid of these paper roads. But I'm not sure why. This portion remains. So can that be purchased? Can that be cleaned up? Maybe. But for purposes of the feasibility study today, the town doesn't own that piece of land. So what we had to do is move the site over from where we had it a couple weeks ago to clear that road. And while you may be able to buy that road, you know, that property owner may not want you to buy that road because it gives him or her a little bit better buffer. When I move this building over, I'm getting into the ledge. It's odd that having to move 30 feet for that road easement has a pretty big impact on the foundation. But now there's a good portion of the building here that's has to deal with ledge and leveling that out. And that's relatively close to some residential properties. So that's something that we need to study. How would you ever do that and not disturb those homeowners and residents should that road not be purchasable? What? Sorry. So here's just from the geotechnical report. This is done by PAR Engineering when the school hired them to look at this site for the school. And so this is where we found out that it reported this area was filled during construction of the school. And it goes through and talks about the bedrock issues. The final report will go into this in some detail. I just trying to summarize it for tonight. And then these are actual soil borings that were done at the site. So I'd like to have this in because it makes citizens that come to these meetings go, they have some information. They're just not making this up. What's nice is that on some portions of the site, you got topsoil. And then right after the topsoil, you have native fill, and that's easy. Native soil. Some portions of the site, you have topsoil, and then all of a sudden you have fill that goes down that you have to remove or otherwise deal with. There's water in the street. If there's not water, that's complicated. So it's great, there's water. There's no sewer in that street. We've put in the budget 650 lineal feet of new sewer line. Now the school's on a different, they're on a pump station. So we need to learn a little bit more about that, but we know that we have to bring sewer in for this particular building. Stormwater would be relatively manageable because that's a big site. No floodplains, no wetlands. So pretty good. Plenty of parking on this site. Now, we can't vouch for the school, but certainly it would be worth talking to the school committee. When there was a special event, could there be a managed traffic management plan of, we can get 95 parking spaces on the site. If we needed 10 across the street on a special occasion, would that be feasible? We don't know. That's something to investigate, but might be worth looking into in the next phase. I mentioned these, this talks about the, you do want to coordinate your activities with arrival and departure of the high school. I think the high school starts early enough that senior center, council on centers for active living open more around 9 and get busy around 8:30 to 9. I think that the morning is not so much of an issue. We'll have to learn more about the afternoon departures. And again, oddly enough, on that particular site, a community center, which would be a center for active living, is not allowed as of right. A cultural center is allowed with a variance from a zoning board of appeals, a special permit from zoning board of appeals, and a different type of nonprofit cultural center is allowed with a waiver and a special permit from the community development. So there's probably ways to work your way out of the fact. And in fact, you don't really have to because the town's exempt from their zoning, but we're taking this approach saying most communities really don't want to take that heavy hand. They want to follow things through in the way that makes most sense because these laws are put in to protect the neighbors. The last site is Simon's Way, and right now you come up here and go to the ice arena, and then the road stops. This is a rather narrow road that takes you down to the rifle range. The particular site is here. The site goes back 16 acres. It goes way back. The proposal is that the town had envisioned putting a property line and separating out the front 5± acres from the back, which is primarily wetlands. And that's shown on this drawing, that there would be a property line here that's roughly going here on this drawing. And then that property line sort of follows the shape of the wetland flags. That what this site is unique about is that this back portion of the site is pretty wet, and the wetland flags are delineated along this back edge. The access to the rifle range is a easement, so it's a town-owned easement. You can see that this particular parcel doesn't have any frontage on the street, which is a problem. But what we would propose is extending Simon's Way here to some point, and that would give you a frontage on Simon's Way. The town could make that a public way, and that's basically what happened to that side of the road. Was built, I think actually, or deeded before the hockey rink or the ice arena. So here's Range Road or Simon's Way, however you want to call it. That easement would bring you down from that intersection into the parking lot. You drop off. This is all nice and level. Beautiful site. We could get 80 spaces easily in here. We could push back a little bit more and get 95. There's no problem with parking here. You may have seen a different site plan earlier where we had the parking all up here and put the building back here, but it made more sense than second blush after the. It's great to go to these public meetings because you sit in that public meeting 2 weeks ago, that Saturday, and you go, oh, it'd be really nice to have parking for the pickleball and go here and have the pickleball not be on top of the school. I mean, the CAL. And before you couldn't really get to the pickleball because the pickleball was behind the building. And so this cleans this up a lot nicer. The public safety would be able to come in, get out, and then go back. They don't have any trouble with fire trucks, emergency access. That first slide we showed shows the travel distance. This is about 1.25 miles from the fire station. So none of them are really problematic from a response time for emergency vehicles, police, or EMTs. The pickleball is also nice because it's on the back side of the ice arena, so it's not bothering anybody there, and there's no residential properties here. The mention that the shooting range is up there. Keep that in mind here. This is how you get to it. Haverhill Street comes down here, and we would have to bring utilities down that street. The club, the club's already done that. This line is a water line that's going back to there. If it's big, we don't know if it's big enough to handle water for the recal. We're assuming that it's not in our cost estimate, so we have the worst case covered. That's the same picture in the winter, in the summer. And then, this is, the idea is to bring the entry in to this far enough away from this intersection that as a senior or a student driver, you can come out, turn, and have enough time to collect yourself, see if somebody's coming that way. Whereas in the old drawing you saw a couple of weeks ago, we were coming right in here and you come out here and you're not sure if you can see someone. So there's a big advantage to extending this road down for this site. And then this just showing the extension that they're going in frontage. You can see the site is relatively flat. What it has is no utilities. Stormwater would be easier to handle, except when you have a high water table, stormwater gets a little bit more complicated. this site does have a few environmental flags that were raised by Weston and Sampson. I want to really cover that because I heard the other day toxic waste was on the site, which I want to allay the concern. That's not the concern. What Weston and Sampson is reporting is as part of the due diligence to purchase a site, they looked at this site and they did these a PID is an ionization test to see if there's any organic compounds like gasoline in the water. And what they found is that from a geotechnical perspective, the site's not problematic. They found that from a wetland perspective, there are wetlands, but there's enough land that's not in the wetland area that it's not problematic. I'm gonna just jump to where I was going. What they did find in a rather complicated report is that they recommend that any due diligence be done going to the next phase of a particular project, do two things. Look at the site for any lead that may be on the site from the rifle range. I think it's not likely that they turned around and shot this way, but I think Weston and Sampson's job is to be cautious and warn you of the issues. So they're saying do a superficial test on lead, and then they would like you to do a little bit more testing of the groundwater. The tests that came back, there were 7 wells drilled and 3 of them had some readings of compounds in the groundwater. The reading was 14 parts per million. A low reading in an ionization test is 10,000 parts per million. So 14 parts, I'm not an environmental scientist, but Weston and Sampson didn't raise a red flag and say, don't buy this site. They just said, as you go to the next phase, do your due diligence. Because even if there are those parts per million, well, in Falmouth, we have a gasification system underneath their basement floor slab. Just make sure that that kind of problem gets vented to the outside. So there's many ways to deal with that. And this information is public information and it's out there and it's going to be in our report. And I want everybody to realize, well, this site has that issue that the other sites don't. But it's not like it's a toxic. Now, some people think that there are a couple cars on the site and there are a couple of concrete culverts. These culverts happen to be designed to go underground and deal with sewer and water, so that's not really a problem. The cars aren't great, but there's no sign in any of the tests that were done that odor or discoloration of the soil tests, and it's not known as a waste site for in this Commonwealth. Okay. Again, I have to read the report and this in the old days, when I was a kid, that was a Nike missile site from 1955 to 63. And here is your site. So some people thought this was a Nike missile site and their Nike missile. It wasn't on your site. There was an access road on your site and there was an access road up there to that site. But the missile site was up there in the area that's already developed for the ice rink and the field. So you have to assume that they did their due diligence when they built their building to understand that. Unfortunately, what the Weston and Sampson letter says is that some sites in Massachusetts that had Nike missiles have reported chemical waste on the site. That doesn't mean this site has it, they're just saying some of them. That's like saying a little bit like sometimes when you go out on the highway, there's an accident. You know, I mean, again, it raises a flag that we have to cover as a team, as a town, in the next phase and not gloss over. But I don't think that it raises itself to the issue that we have to be worried about toxic waste on this particular site. Again, that has a community center not allowed, but the same way to get around it. And then it doesn't have the frontage, but we think that you can create frontage on that site. Okay, so sorry it took so long. I'll try to go quicker here on the floor plans. And what I'm wanting to do on the floor plans is Pleasant Street is gonna be a different site because we're using the existing building, which is a 2,100 square foot footprint. That's sort of the basis of it, and it's right there, and it's not going anywhere, so you're building onto that. And that, but I think there are a lot of ways to solve the problem, but I think this is a nice way to solve it. What Rachel had started doing is you put the multi-purpose room in the kitchen, and if we do an extension in that red area on this floor. What that means is that people parking in the garage can come right in. On the lower level, they can come in, take the elevator up. And that big multi-purpose room that would be much bigger than the selectmen's room in here, that might be open at night for meetings like this or other meetings, is on the ground floor. You can get to it. And all of the Center for Active Living activities are on the second floor. So you just, bathrooms are here, parking is here. You don't have to go upstairs. If you want to share that room at night, which is a great room to share, it's really a nice plan for doing that. Then on your second floor, you, in the scheme that has a gym, you would have the gym. We'd have offices, bathrooms, we have classrooms, arts and crafts, maybe 1 or 2 story addition on here. We think if the Historic Commission was interested in allowing an addition, we think they probably would want to say a 1 story addition there. But this gets us the gym in the building, and I'll show you the programs that aren't in there coming up. But it's a 20,000 square foot footprint, so there's more space in here than we had. And we don't have every little detail, so I'd like Council on Aging not to sort of go through this with the microscope. We'll take it to the next level, but right now we have 6 different plans we're working on, and you can't get everything worked out. But I think what's interesting is in the last 2 weeks, we've gotten more space, and it's a more rational layout. Ground floor, there's nothing in the basement except overfloor bathrooms for when there's a huge performance in this thing. And we don't want people having to work down in that basement level. It's just not that nice. So your lower level has a nice storage room, great for Centers for Active Living, overflow bathrooms, and the parking garage. Here you can see to get to the lower parking garage, you come off of Parker, and that's a sort of tough little turn. And the other thing I want to point out is that this level of the garage doesn't connect to this level of the garage. So if you're coming in and you get down here, that space has to remain open. Everybody's filled. You got to back up, go out, drive around the street, do the same exercise on the lower level to see if there are any spaces. I'm getting at it, the garage isn't as good as a parking lot because you can't see the whole thing and you can't see where you might want to go. So it's a clever way to solve the parking problem on this site. It's not necessarily the best solution. What I said was we've really gotten more space in the building, but we're short 1 large program room, 1 fitness studio, the senior lounge, and the program coordinator. And this particular one does not have the track above the gym. The gym is so close to the neighbors and it's already on the second floor of the building. The gym has a 24, 22 foot ceiling height. You put a track in there, it's really going to dwarf the neighbors. So we felt just not realistic to propose that. The track sits in the volume of the gym. We don't really count that as square footage in our plans. So that's why area is not there. There's really 2,900 square feet of program space efficiency in this when you compare it to the program. And I never like to say, trust me, but I'm pretty sure that that's gonna work out that way when we get to the next phase, if we get there on this phase. Like I said, we don't have every room in here drawn out, but we've spent a lot of time on this.
So Joel, so those shortfalls are against the assumption that you have that bump out?
No. Again, they don't have that assumption. The bump out is, and it would solve some of the shortfall.
Okay.
810 square feet of shortfall. Now, what's really sort of interesting, if the town decides that they don't need a gym, which I'm all in favor of the gym. Full disclosure. We could, as I mentioned, make the building a little smaller, solve the setback problems. Where the gym was, now we can get your full program. This has the Center for Active Living program, except for the gym. And you could build on any of the other two sites, the full Center for Active Living without a gym as well. So now programmatically they're equal, and I happen to like it, but you know, you could put the senior lounge here and change the arrangement. I like the multi-purpose room because I do think that this multi-purpose room is going to have a real value. It's got a nice high ceiling. It could be used by theater groups. It could be used by sports groups. We have in Andover, they have wrestling in their multi-purpose room. You know, there's people are really anxious to use nice multi-purpose spaces, and that could be a really great space. So having it segregated from the upper floor, I think is really nice. And the same parking system works. Okay.
Did you say that the parking, second level of parking is street level?
The second level parking is right at street level and right at the floor level of the main building. And that's the big, that has the most parking. So that's a very nice arrangement. Middle of winter, you come in, you park in a garage, no snow or ice to deal with. I'll show you the cost of the garage.
Can I just ask a question about the multi-purpose room?
Yep.
I'm assuming that it can be divided.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah.
Okay.
And there's nothing to say that if this is the preferred site, when we get to concept design, we don't say, you know what, maybe we want to put the multi-purpose room on the second floor where it can have a different shape, because maybe it would be nicer to have a living room feeling on the ground floor for seniors in the Center for Active Living. There are a lot of options. We had to pick one. Yes, ma'am.
Just one more question, and I know you've got 6 models, I haven't heard you say the words yet. Dining is an important, dining is an
Dining.
important feature, and
Well,
the kitchen.
We have a
For
full
seniors.
kitchen.
Right, but this multi-purpose room, it would be there for dining?
Yeah.
So like it might even be lunch every day,
Could be.
might or might not. Okay.
Thank you, because that's one of the big things I wanted to talk about on the other scheme. There's a difference. So this is the option that is the new building at one of the other two sites. So I know your heads are gonna explode. This is giving you a lot of information tonight, but it's a little bit different from what Rachel showed 2 weeks ago, because we learned some things at that meeting. The parking lot in both schemes there, the drop off is here, you come into the building here, and there's a lobby. And if the gym is there, it would be here. And we're saying put the multi-purpose room over here. Rachel had the multi-purpose room up there in the last scheme. That meant that if you wanted to use the multi-purpose room for this meeting tonight, you would sort of walk into that area, and there was sort of confusion about, am I in the Center for Active Living or am I in, you know, multi-use spaces? By putting it on this side, you have the multi-purpose room, the gym and bathrooms can be used, and you can close off this is a model we've done in a number of buildings, because even if this is a community center, you don't want youth basketball wandering through your whole building at night. So this puts a nice barrier at this point. You can come in, use the multipurpose room, you can use the gym. And in this particular scheme, the kitchen is here, and you'd say, well, why do you put the kitchen opposite the lobby? Well, because a lot of our current senior centers have little openings where they sell muffins and coffee. So if I put the kitchen here, it can serve out to the lobby. And if there's a basketball game on those weekends, they can use the kitchen. And now all of a sudden you have a real active space here that has a lot of flexibility. Of course, the kitchen could go down here where it does make some sense from a service point of view. And then the lobby would enter directly into the multipurpose room. We can talk about that for a month and decide later. But what's really a key issue on this is that come in, go to your right, it's public, and you don't have to worry about anybody going into your offices, and whoever's using the game room, whether that's recreation, that can be cordoned off at night. All the activities are on that side. It happens to be 2 stories. There's separate bathrooms on this side. There's a big bathroom for the gym and that here. But again, you don't have everybody using the restrooms at night and those kinds of things. And of course, the program can shift. You know, arts and crafts may be on the 2nd floor. This is just showing that everything fits in, and it fits in 23,600 square feet with all the circulation and everything else. It has a track above the gym. And the other thing that's really nice, Pleasant Street by itself has a nice high ceiling in the multipurpose room because of the fire station. A lot of our senior centers, if you go to them, 2-story senior centers don't always have that nice high ceiling above the multipurpose room. But by moving the multipurpose room to this side of the building, there's nothing above it. So we can have a 10, 12-foot ceiling height in here, which makes a much nicer multipurpose room, and it doesn't affect the rest of the building. So the whole idea of shifting this had cost and practicality issues. We've matched up the programs and showed Pleasant Street without the gym, Pleasant Street with the gym. And I took out the column that just showed the basic program because these are the basic programs. The Pleasant Street with the gym, and I mean, Oakland and Simon's Way with the gym are your full program. And I can send that full program out. It just got to be hard to read on the screen. Okay, so we took the pickleball out of the scheme and did a cost estimate, and we bumped up the square footage. And this as a typo, that should be 23.6 instead of 20. I'm sorry about that. But it's really odd how close the numbers are to each other. We didn't expect it. I don't think anybody expected it. But again, this doesn't have the track and doesn't have that other program space. When you take the gym out of the scheme, they get to be a little bit more fair in comparison because now they're all 18,100 square feet. And you can see here, you're paying for the parking in that scheme versus this scheme. Now, someone asked me, what was the cost of the parking? If you just pull the parking out with the foundations, it's 6.284. That's not the difference between these 2 schemes because you still need the foundations if you get rid of the parking. And there's a lot of factors that go into it. So the cost of the garage is really that, but that doesn't necessarily get, it's tough to explain why it doesn't get reflected in, it's not $6 million difference One other reason it's not $6 million difference is that this has a full parking lot and site work. And at Simon's Way, we have centuries of trees on that site. And there happens to be 2 to 4 feet of forest mat on that site. And that forest mat has to be taken out and fill put in underneath the building in the parking lot. That goes into this number. So the reason that you don't see the 6 million difference in those prices is that the site work costs are in this and make that mitigation.
Question?
Yes, ma'am.
I just didn't catch, you said there was a typo. Which one was the wrong number?
And the square footage on the new building is 23,600. And we. Okay, the pickleball, $400,000 for the pickleball, wherever you decide to put it. So the cost of the gym, that was a question that was asked with the track. Again, here in the gym, there is that cost. It's a little bit less expensive in a new building when you're not building it on a garage. You know, if you build a gym on a garage, you have to heat the floor underneath the gym because the garage is gonna freeze in the wintertime. So that's why that's a little bit very close to this number, even though this has a track and that doesn't have a track. So we gave you these breakouts. I didn't give you this breakout for everybody to think, oh, we don't have to do the garage at Pleasant Street. The idea was, I think Mark suggested that there may be other ways to fund a garage through grants or other vehicles to pay for that kind of infrastructure.
One more question.
Yeah.
Pleasant Street, is indoor pickleball possible with the gym?
Yes, ma'am. 3 courts.
Okay, so it's not entirely not feasible. Just
Well,
not-
any one of them would have pickleball, I meant the
An
outside.
outdoor one.
Yeah. All right.
Thank you.
I have a question too. Just to understand this slide, so you said some of them are breakout and some of them are alternate. The cost of the gym, is that cost already included?
That's included.
But the other ones are additional.
This would be an additional cost to add pickleball courts outside. Thank you. I'll clarify that. Is that this is included in the cost, the gym. This is the additional space. That's that additional space in red that you asked about. Is that included? So adding that space would. So we have a lot of data and all the data gets compiled, and not that anybody wants to read it, but for people going to town meeting, the point is that as a group, we've been diligent about investigating these sites and asking all the questions and recording each site in the same way. It wasn't a biased approach, and this shows you that you've treated each site in the same manner. What this is a little bit more subjective. I took what are some of the key factors that we're looking at, clean site, environmental, indoor track, and said, do they have it or do they not have it? So you can see the check marks, a yes, and the check marks happen to favor the newer sites just because different sites. The real work is this, and I think I'm going to commend everybody for spending a lot of time on this. What we try and do is have 12 points that whichever groups are going to go through and evaluate the sites against the same criteria. And that criteria is the criteria that we all agree about. And within each option, say operational costs, there are 3 categories: a high category, a middle category, and a low category. So you can, within each category of evaluation, pick a range of scores. And the idea of this is that this levels out the evaluation. So it's not like, I just like Pleasant Street because that's where we've been all the time. And that's not one of the criteria. Nancy, I mean, we'll work on 12. I haven't done that because I think it's not my job to decide that. It's the group's decision to decide how to change the wording on that. I do know that subjective analysis comes into it. So up till now, the title that I gave this was comparative analytics. Now we're going to subjective analytics. At the last point in the evaluation, we're saying you can get 10 points or 20 points, however many we want, with what you might think about the particular sites. Because I think it's important to have an emotional reaction and an emotional response and a measured response to what you think is good and what may not fit in to these categories. And that gives you a way to express your thoughts about the sites. I've seen this in designer selections and I think it's quite effective. And it's sort of a separate number and then this chart automatically adds up all the points. If you guys don't want to fill out the form, you can do it by hand and we'll fill it out. These happen to tally into your page and all can be like a town vote. You don't have, it's secure. And so timeline for halfway through the feasibility study, we got our data, we want to write it up and go through the evaluation process and hopefully bring that to the select board and then get on to the conceptual schematic design phase to finish out the year. So I think we're making great progress. It was a group, 2 groups and don't need that one.
Yeah.
Sorry it took so long, but
Thank you.
I wanted to.
The question,
Unless someone else wants to refer back to the slide. But, you know.
I had a question. My antenna went up and I had been alerted about it from Nancy beforehand. When you talked about at the Pleasant Street that you have to back up because it's a one-way. I'm thinking, well, if it's because there's no more spaces, that means there'll probably be several people behind you following is there any other way of doing that?
And we need to work with our traffic engineer. Is there a way to control that from before you enter the garage, where there's a signal system that says space 12 is available? There's a way to do that. And then you would know before you go into the garage that there is or is not a space available. That's a little
Some
bit,
garages I've been in do have that, but I don't.
that's expensive and
Yeah.
it doesn't always work, but
But is there any other way than no other exit out of it? And if you get to the very last space.
Turntable?
No, I mean.
Batman thing?
When have you ever been in a place where there's no
Yeah.
No way.
Yeah.
way?
Yeah.
it's not, I think that's the flaw. Parking is the difficulty at Pleasant Street. Whether it's enough parking, whether it's getting into it and out of it, or once you get into it, navigating. It's not great. Parking garages are a little bit more difficult for people to drive in than parking lots.
I have a question about the costs. So you have some totals there. There's always cost overruns, there's always what percentage above have you anticipated will be above this figure? And also what other factors, for example, the cleaning up the contamination at Simon's Way, unanticipated. So what other unanticipated costs do you think that there will be?
The cost estimate itself has 10% contingency in it.
Okay.
And then we do, I can send it to you. I had it in there and it's a lot of information and everybody thought it was too detailed. There's a total project cost that says, I got to build the building, but then in addition to building the building, I have to hire the architect, I have to hire the engineers, I have to do the moving. If I'm using Pleasant Street as a renovation, I have to move those out, and maybe rent the space for the interim. What is any cost that you have to incur on the project that's not a construction cost? And we put that into the total project cost. That total project cost includes a 10% contingency above and beyond what's in the cost estimate. Because we're so early on in the design, the town may decide to do something, add in a program. They may be something that we don't know more on the hazardous materials than we've planned in our budget. So you basically have 20% contingency built in at this very early phase.
In that $22 million figure.
That's correct.
20%.
And each phase of the project, that contingency gets reduced down, because as you get more information, you don't need to carry those contingencies. At the end of the day, you still want contingency, but they will get reduced. 20% sounds like a lot, but we're so early that we have to cover.
And the non-construction costs, what is considered with that? Is
Well,
that
it's
part of
about,
it as
a
well?
non-construction cost can be anywhere between 20 to 30% of the construction cost. By law, the town has to hire a project manager to manage, and a clerk of the work to manage the job, to make sure that it's all done according to Hoyle. They have to hire an architect. So those two fees are your two biggest costs. There's legal expenses, there's peer review when we go to planning board. There's moving expenses. No matter where you go, you're gonna have some moving expenses. There's, I don't have it in front of me, but there's probably 30 different cost items.
FF&E is in there as well.
For an audiovisual is 250,000 on a building like this, yeah.
And again, that is already included.
In that total number, I showed you the total project cost numbers. I didn't show you the construction costs. That's
Okay.
total, that when you go to town meeting and you ask for the project to be funded, that's the amount that you would look for.
A couple of things on Oakland Road. Has it been ever considered where it's so close with that road coming from the high school and going into the center to put a traffic light on both sites to versus having just coming through one and exiting the students coming out or those seniors coming out? What about a traffic light at both
Yeah.
driveways? Is that an additional cost, underground services? And also is there one site that is better for emergency services versus the other? And does this division have to be approved by early responders?
Yeah, so the answer to your first question is the traffic engineers didn't think that that intersection of the high school and Oakland warranted a traffic signal. But we could certainly bring that up as another topic.
As a safety.
Plus it has a crosswalk, right?
Well,
If two.
from a response time, I mean, we do want to get to the police and fire, but you know, Pleasant Street's obviously your closest, and then up here you're 0.75 miles, and I think my
That's up behind.
spot,
Right.
oh, yeah, that's 1.25 miles.
But I'm talking about response equipment getting in. Is there,
I think, well, equipment getting, at Pleasant Street, you'd get to the edge of the building.
right,
The other ones, you can get to the edge of the building at the parking lots.
okay,
And the access is good.
okay. And what about on Oakland, removal of the trees, et cetera? What about water flow and catch basins? That's an additional expense for the
And
construction?
that's included in that,
Okay,
but it is a good it is a good point. You know, full disclosure, Pleasant Street's already been cleared. You would be clearing a site that hasn't been cleared, and in theory, those trees are absorbing carbon, so you get some benefit out of those trees that are on that site.
thank you.
So,
I just don't understand completely the site ranking worksheet. So if I were filling this out and I gave 90 points to Pleasant Street across the 12
topics and 144 to Oakland and 108 to Simmons. Where's the 10, 20 and the 15 coming from?
There's a second page that takes you to your subjective analysis and then totals up the score. That's,
This gives me, do you mean the weighting? Is that what you're talking about?
and there's a,
Subjective score.
unless we didn't print it by mistake.
No, it's not in there.
This one. So this one?
Yes, yes, yep.
This one here.
Page
What
number,
are
is
the
that right?
timelines, this
I
timeline?
wanna
No,
know
what's the
where the
number
reviewer
that's just
points
below it?
come from.
The
68,
reviewer points go in
67,
here.
67.
Right,
and-
where do those reviewer points come from?
You put them in.
I put in the 90, the 144 and the 100.
And that automatically goes in this column.
Right?
This is your subjective. Well, I like Pleasant Street because I've gone there for 30 years and I want to
Okay,
keep
so it's
going there.
independent of the 12 questions.
That's correct.
My gut.
Right.
This is what okay, now I got it.
Yeah, thank
Okay, so
you.
Both of them, in my opinion, it's just a different category. I got it, thank you.
Thanks, yeah, great question.
So Joel, you're suggesting that would have to be some sort of, approach that we have to take consistently. Okay, you get 50 points that you can allocate based on some subjective criteria that you want to assess on each of the sites or something to that effect.
We said 20 points.
Oh, you gave a total of 45, right?
That's the highest you can give any particular site.
Oh, each individually. Okay, I see.
You can rank each one.
Okay, so you'd have to have a process, you'd have to define exactly what I think that was your point, right? Okay.
Oh. They're good learning experiences.
And you would add your own notes, just explaining. Yeah. Okay.
I didn't want to have those notes, but everybody thought it was clearer. Because I thought it was gonna prejudice how people.
So I liked one because it took down all the oak trees and I'm allergic to them. Crazy as it would be, I could put that in, okay, and you would know it's because of my oak allergy. Okay, I got it.
I found this incredibly helpful, and I'm very surprised that Pleasant Street Center is the most expensive alternative. So it's really helpful to see that.
Yeah, it's not unusual for our renovations to be more expensive than new construction.
Small site too.
Right. Historic.
And to make that building work, you sort of have to take the inside of it down and then to put the parking garage in, we're beginning to undermine the foundations. So that's complicated. But Sam,
Could the design, the addition is facing the building, the addition would be on the left, correct? Could the design be on the Parker Street side going to the right and making that hill entrance in and out to a parking lot?
sorry about the wrong way. Try that again.
I was wondering on the Parker Street side, if that's where the addition could go.
There is an
No,
addition.
no, right there and extended straight down.
Yeah, we are extending down already.
Could you go further down
You could go further.
and then make more parking from the Pleasant Street? Or do you have to have the garage is what I'm saying?
You have to have.
Okay.
But you can't drop that down because you'd be in the road.
In the road, yeah. Well, you could
Angle.
drop a triangle down,
Yeah.
but again, you need this, here's where the ramp is. That ramp's not gonna be that much fun. It'll be used mostly by the skateboard group. Quite fun.
It's a new senior sport.
And the costs that you showed today are with that extension.
The cost includes this extension,
Yeah,
but not that one.
but not.
And that one we gave as an additional This one, I think, is doable. The second floor of that, I think, is questionable, but I think the way, if you look at the building, there's a sort of hip roof on it that you could really sort of, you can make it look really good, whether they like it or not, is another question. All right,
So in the gym in this configuration has a 22-foot ceiling,
21, 22, yeah.
21 something. That would make that part of the building pretty tall.
It is, we put a flat roof on it and suggested the advantage of doing a flat roof is that would be a wonderful solar collector. South is.
So I have another question. So, do you have any ideas, like if we do go with Simon's Way or Oakland Road, do you have any ideas of what we would do with the current Pleasant Street Center?
Down a little bit.
Sell it.
There are
A lot of options.
Yes.
Yeah, so I think the town gets to think about what possible options there could be. There are already people that have already expressed interest
No, you don't say.
to use it as is, I mean,
Yeah.
without making any changes to it. There are a couple of folks that have already indicated some interest. There's another group that sent in an unsolicited idea for turning it into something different. So there have already been people who, town hasn't done anything, but people have been saying, how about this, how about this, how about this?
Town groups?
Town-
A couple of town related
Town
groups, yeah,
Artists, things like
yeah, arts, music,
That would be a great cultural,
cultural center idea, absolutely.
More money though.
but that's okay, we deserve it in this town.
Have you also looked at solar panels at the other two sites? And we can put them on the other two sites?
Yes, ma'am.
How, if Pleasant Street site was to be used, would those solar panels in the exterior of the building conform to the historical part of the building? That's my concern.
That's why Jenna was really great about getting, I think it was you, wasn't it, that got us on the historic commission?
Yeah.
The next meeting, yeah. So we're gonna
That's
check
what I
that
thought.
out.
And we should also be talking to RMLD about different ideas and
Maintain.
they're also, who knows what might be possible with them too.
If it were Oakland or Simon's Way, could you do what they did at Stone Zoo, the outdoor parking could have the solar panels?
Yeah, good, yeah.
And that could
Can if you
pay
put-
for a lot of the energy costs?
With you could really approach net zero pretty easily on those two sites.
Aaron on Zoom has a question.
Oh.
See your hand up. Aaron?
I just have a question about Simon's Way and the gym. Is it possible, I can't exactly remember what it looked like. Could the gym be added in a phased product? Like, could we do the building first and then do the gym later? Is that a possibility?
Yes. There'd be a missing tooth on the back of the building, but you could add the gym on in the future. You can't see my finger. Maybe you can put the cursor and show her where that gym would just be left out.
Can you see my cursor move?
I can, yes.
Okay.
Thank
So-
you.
Would that include the bathrooms out too?
You can take them out. Oh, that's a question. You could leave them for the multi-purpose room.
So you'd really miss,
You'd have this piece come out.
yeah.
That everybody would say, oh, why do you want a corridor? When you have the kids, if they do the gym at night, the coaches love this because the parents have to be in the corridor. They can watch and see what's happening and see when the kids coming, but you're not distracting what's going on in the gym. So this area out here, we call it viewing corridor. It's really popular and works really great.
So there's windows into the gym.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Everyone wants to watch pickleball. I know, so.
And that's pickleball, 1, 2, 3. You can get cross courts, 2, and then 1 regulation.
Does this include soundproofing?
Yes,
So the gym will be soundproof? So
Well, it would be
the rest of the
soundproof.
building won't be disturbed?
I mean,
The rest of the building will not be disturbed if people are playing pickleball?
well, one of the other reasons we put this gap here is that there are no walls shared between the program space and the gym. So the gym's an isolated feature.
Soundproof?
Yep.
So you won't hear the ping, ping, ping?
You shouldn't.
But that also means you have essentially 2, sometimes 3 walls between the gym and the program room. Because if you're on the upper side of the gym there, you have storage, looks like restrooms, so you have 3 wall barrier. And then on the left side there, it looks like at least a 2 wall or more.
Yep. And there's no program above the gym, which is nice too. You don't have to worry about noise above. Yep.
I know one of the thoughts is that the gym could be not only used as a gym, but also it could hold a large dining event or a theater event or whatever it might be. How does that work with the gym floor? You know, usually, I don't know, there's, in a gym, you have these restrictions. You can't walk on X, Y, Z because of ABC. Or am I making that up?
The second longest thing we'll talk about when you get to the design of the project is what's the gym floor? Is it wood or is it synthetic? If it's wood, pickleball people prefer synthetic because it has a little more give than a wood floor. Basketball want wood. If it's wood, well, you put a cover on the gym floor when there's a dining event. So you have to have a place to store it, but they roll out and it's not easy to roll it out, but they put a cover on the floor.
Synthetics lifespan is longer. too,
No,
isn't it?
wood's longer.
Oh, wood is longer? Do you know what the lifespan of each is?
We get 10 to 20 years out of the synthetic floors, and the wood, you know, I can get 100 years out of the wood, but you do have to refinish them. But it's not all that hard to refinish a wood gym floor if you manage.
But with the synthetic, we could have like Gatorade or food, or we wouldn't have to cover the floor if it's synthetic.
You wouldn't have to for a meal. You could, you don't have to. That's the advantage of the synthetic. You don't have to.
Current gym in the high school is synthetic.
You don't have to worry about scratching.
Yeah.
And
Someone has a question online too.
Thank you.
And what about exercise? Is wood or synthetic better? You know, exercise groups going in there.
Wood's better. It's more give. There's a floor built on rubber pads and has a lot of give to it. So Zumba, all that's better. No tap dancing.
What does pickleball prefer?
Anything at this point.
I have an opinion, I shouldn't, but I think it's better to have the synthetic because your foot has a little more give and a basketball floor is less giving. But you do see that when I got, to do it,
I mean, this picture is an example of one of the issues with a wood floor. The
Shine?
the shine can be very distracting. And the other thing that happens with wood floors, if there's any dust on the floors, it can be a little slippery. Remember Larry Bird? I don't know whether you're old enough, but he would place this. But it's a nice surface.
Is synthetic less expensive to install? I don't know.
it's less expensive, but
The lifespan is less.
You'd have to replace it. It would last 100 years.
But going
Maybe it
back, going back to the exercise, though, there's a lot of problems with the current, and I don't know if it's wood, it's
Cement.
cement, something underneath in the current center. And it's been the cause of some falls and some injuries.
Because moisture is in the slab underneath it, or?
I don't know. I don't know. So I'm just wondering,
It's not cushioned.
These floors are vented, so the moisture is on the sides and,
Someone else brought up the point of making this also a voting center as well too.
Yeah, Laura.
Joel, can you go back to the drawing? There's a fitness room, kind of the last one that slide you were on. So in other words, in addition to the gym that's being discussed. Yeah, so kind of on the right-hand side, the top left. Is that a soccer floor typically, or how that is? So depending on how many people you have for an activity, you may have choices.
That'd be like a spring floor, of some sort, like a.
yeah, that would be its front floor.
the fitness programs, the exercise programs are probably one of the more popular programs, and they're pretty crowded.
Yeah, a lot of our Zumba classes are moving into gyms because that's going to be popular.
We have other exercise classes that get filled, that whole room is filled.
Yeah, so the gym now, what's nice about the gym is it's divided into three, so there are curtains that can come down and noise is a bit of an issue, but you can have three activities. You could have pickleball here, you could have another group here, and you could have a preschooler group here if you wanted to in the morning. And this idea of a center for active living, if you wanted to, it's not all or nothing in the gym, it can be shared.
Is it, you said a curtain coming down, but could you actually have a wall that you pull forward? I'm trying to remember, I think it's Malden in their big gym.
Yeah,
They have
the high
a
school
solid
has that.
wall that they can slide back.
Soundproof.
All cost money.
Oh,
I've never done it, it's hard to do, and
Yeah.
in Malden, they have a track on the floor, which you really don't want to have either, so.
Joel, can I just talk once again about the walking track? So in Oakland Road and Simons, on top of the gym, because we don't have the same kind of height restrictions, we can have this walking track that's there.
That's correct.
And right now Pleasant Street can't do that even with the gym, just because you're already up 22 feet to the ceiling and then you'd have to go
Well,
another 10 or something.
it's that, and I don't have any way to get up there. I'd have to bring two stairs and an elevator, because that's the only thing on the top floor of the building.
Yeah.
And,
It's not correct.
yeah,
It's not that much taller.
it's not that much, it's a little bit
It
taller.
needs that height anyway.
Okay, so you're chopping some out of the 22.
It's getting to it.
But getting there is the issue.
I think there was a comment.
Someone had a comment online, Jenna.
Oh, yeah, we're,
Chris is typing back to see if they want to speak.
Hi, this is, yes. I want to comment on pickleball for Oakland. I lived in the neighborhood, and your siting of the pickleball court is so close to the houses, and that's a constant ping, ping, ping noise, as you all know. I don't think that's an appropriate spot for a pickleball court. And my other question is, are you anticipating lighting at that court as well?
On Oakland, we drew the pickleball to show what that adjacency problem was. And as you can see, we didn't include it in the cost estimate. So it's not included in that scheme, but the drawing shows it there so that we could explain how close it is to the neighbors and the noise and the light issues.
It's not.
So it would not be at Oakland.
Okay, understood. Thank you.
Good question.
I'm sorry. Quick question, and it's not actually directed to you. It's a town thing that I'm thinking of. If we went with Pleasant Street in Oakland, have we considered Simon's Way, using it as green space, putting the pickleball courts there and doing the walking park or
So
something?
you might want to come to our SWEC meeting Monday.
I mean,
No, that's what we're discussing and
That
we're
would
making
be-
recommendations. We're putting together our presentation for the
Oh,
select board.
I didn't know that. Oh,
Yes.
good, go ahead.
Yes.
And I think that that's part of kind of a question that you were bringing up at the very
Well,
beginning also,
that's
to make
what I
sure
got
that we're
meeting
looking
too.
at all the.
Yeah.
have to-
That's third.
Right.
Another tax.
I mean, I could just respond to like that. I have a lot of experience with pickleball and the Oakland Road site is really not ideal on a number of fronts. And basically in that area, it would be very expensive to build it. I think the Port McKay is probably not adequate to build that with the excavation, whatever would have to be
If we
done.
did it there, we were thinking it would be like the old paddleball courts on a platform.
Up high, yes, even more not ideal, but
Right.
and you know, just to say in pickleball land, I think Simon's Way is a much better site. It gets well away from neighbors, buildings are in between neighbors and play. But you probably actually need 8 courts in town, just to let you know. Try and reduce the level of use of other stuff, which I think is what we would all like to do.
So we could do the pickleball courts on Simon's Way, but put our community center on Oakland. They don't have to be together.
They do not have to be together.
They don't have not being together.
In an ideal world, we'd have a clear playing field in Reading and we could put everything where.
You have no
we want.
land. Except Memorial Park.
Yeah,
Can we break the trust in Memorial Park?
so I just wanted to say that.
Yeah.
that Oakland Road is not a good place for pickleball. I like it for senior center or a community center.
Any other questions? I just wanted to quickly just say to everyone here and online, I just want to say thank you for all the work that everyone, you know, especially on both committees, the COA and the recalc. You know, I know you have volunteered to be on these boards, but you know, it's, you know, we're doing great things, but it's taking time. And, you know, everyone seems to be coming together, even though we still have a long road ahead. At least on my side, I want to make sure, you know, I want to thank everyone and how appreciated this is. I think probably, I know I mean it, Jenna, and I know probably Matt, everyone appreciates everything everyone's doing. You guys bring to the table great ideas, great thoughts, great questions. And it's an exciting time. It's a long road and there's still a lot of things to be figured out. But what an exciting, it's pretty exciting. You know, and it's hard to say what we'll end up with, but I want to make sure that you know that we appreciate all your time that you put into this. You know, it's late nights, more meetings. So thank you all very much for all your effort.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
And Jenna motions.
Jenna, does Recal have another meeting set?
You don't, if you want to discuss that now.
I would, yes.
Awesome.
So, suggested, well, we usually have them on Wednesdays.
Next Wednesday? Soon?
Everybody's here. What about next Wednesday?
Nancy, when is the Wednesday that we're having the open house here? I mean, at Pleasant Street,
The 11th.
the 11th? And that's from 5 to 8 at the Pleasant Street Center, is it not?
6.
Okay,
April 3rd.
so the 11th wouldn't be good.
No.
Thursday.
April 3rd.
Third.
Oh, it's a Thursday, I thought it was a Wednesday.
John, this is just to recap what we heard tonight.
Yes, and we didn't get to, you know, wrapping up recounts.
Yep.
So April 3rd, next Wednesday.
I'm good. John? That's all.
Sorry.
Laura, does April 3rd work for you?
Oh, yes, yes. I'm looking at John's calendar.
No, John's so spread out.
Can we do a 6:30?
Yes.
Since I'm the only one in the room to do it, should I proceed? Well, I'm the only one that can call for adjournment of both committees.
Oh, there you
go.
You have to do it twice though.
Yep,
Yeah.
do it twice.
Move to adjourn.
We just need to show of hands for recount, because it's a hybrid meeting.
Well, I
for
mean-
Council, they have to actually do a roll call, right?
All right, so I make two motions.
One at a time.
It was more fun doing it for both. Okay, so I'm going to adjourn for a recount.
Okay, go ahead. Second. All in favor? Unanimous? Okay, recount is adjourned.
Motion to adjourn for the council on aging.
Second.
Okay, roll call. Karen Panet,
Yes.
Karen Twentino,
Yep.
Karen Janowska, Jean Prado. Yes. Nancy T.
Yes.
Rose Marie. Oh, John Parsons. Oh, no, you missed the motion.
Who gets the vote?
You didn't call me. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes. You go to the other one.
All right.
Michael?